was a stormy Friday night, and my best friend Jake and I had decided to have a sleepover. We had been looking forward to it for weeks, planning to play video games, eat junk food, and share the latest gossip from school. But little did we know that this seemingly ordinary night would turn into a spine-chilling ordeal that would haunt us for the rest of our lives. The evening had been fun, as expected. We binged on pizza and soda, played our favorite video games, and shared some hilarious YouTube videos. By the time the clock struck 2 a.m., we were exhausted, and the thunderstorm outside seemed like the perfect backdrop for a good night's sleep. We decided to crash on the living room floor, our sleeping bags spread out next to each other. As we lay there, half dozing and listening to the rain hitting the window pane, a strange noise pierced through the soothing sound of the raindrops. Jake and I exchanged puzzled glances, both sitting up in our sleeping bags. It sounded like faint footsteps, barely audible over the storm. We thought it was our imagination at first, but the noise persisted, growing closer. "What's that sound, Max?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling with fear. I strained my ears, trying to locate the source of the footsteps. They were coming from somewhere inside the house. Our parents were out of town for the weekend, and there was no one else in the house, or at least, there shouldn't have been. A chill ran down my spine as I realized that someone was inside our home, prowling in the dead of night. Terrified and unsure of what to do, I reached for my phone and dialed 911. The dispatcher on the other end of the line assured us that help was on the way and advised us to stay quiet and hidden. Jake and I huddled together, our hearts racing, as the footsteps drew closer to the living room where we were hiding. We could hear the intruder moving around the house, his footsteps growing louder and more distinct. He was getting closer, and it felt like an eternity waiting for the police to arrive. Time seemed to slow down, the seconds stretching into agonizing minutes as we heard him enter the room next to the living room. Suddenly, the door to the living room creaked open, revealing a shadowy figure dressed entirely in black. The intruder's face was obscured by a ski mask, and he was holding a small bag, presumably to collect valuables. His gaze swept across the room, and for a moment, it felt like his eyes locked onto ours. Our breath caught in our throats, and our hearts pounded so loudly we were sure he could hear them. Before the intruder could make a move toward us, the distant wails of sirens grew nearer, and the flashing lights of police cars illuminated the room. In a panic, the intruder made a run for it, retreating through the same door he had entered. The police officers stormed into the house just moments later, but the intruder had managed to escape into the rainy night. We gave our statements to the police, describing the intruder as best as we could. They assured us that they would do everything they could to track him down, but our sense of security had been shattered. Jake and I couldn't fall back asleep that night, and we spent the remaining hours until morning replaying the terrifying events in our minds. The next few days were filled with anxiety and uncertainty. We installed extra locks on the doors and windows, and our parents decided to return home early. Jake and I were relieved to have them back, but the feeling of unease lingered. We kept the lights on at night and avoided being alone in the house. 3 days after the break-in, as we were trying to get back to some semblance of normalcy, something happened that sent shivers down our spines. I received a message notification on my Instagram account from an anonymous user. The message contained a photo of Jake and me from the night of our sleepover. It was taken through the window, and we were completely unaware of it. The message read, "I see you, Max and Jake. We had such a fun night. Let's do it again sometime." I showed the message to Jake, and we both paled in horror. It was the same intruder, the man in black who had invaded our home. He knew our names, had taken pictures of us, and was taunting us through a fake Instagram account. We immediately contacted the police and showed them the message, but there was little they could do without concrete evidence of the intruder's identity. We decided to increase our own vigilance. Jake and I started to take self-defense classes, and we vowed to watch out for one another. We installed security cameras around our property and checked the locks multiple times each night. Despite our best efforts, the fear and anxiety remained a constant companion in our lives. Weeks turned into months, and there were no further messages or sightings of the mysterious intruder. We started to believe that he had moved on, or perhaps he had been scared off by the increased security measures we had taken. The sense of normalcy slowly returned to our lives, but we could never completely shake off the haunting memories of that night. As time passed, we focused on our schoolwork, our hobbies, and our friendships, trying to put the horrifying ordeal behind us. The memory of the intruder, however, continued to cast a long shadow over our lives. We couldn't help but feel as though he was still out there, watching and waiting for the right moment to strike again. One summer evening, as Jake and I were hanging out at a local pizza place, our phones simultaneously buzzed with a new message from the same anonymous Instagram account. The message contained a series of photos, all taken without our knowledge, capturing moments from the past few months. There were pictures of us at school, at the pizza place, even in our own homes. The message read, "I've been watching you. You can't hide." Our hearts pounded, and the familiar dread returned. We were no closer to identifying the intruder than we had been months ago. The police had no leads, and the photos were all taken from a distance, making it impossible to discern the identity of our tormentor. Feeling trapped and frightened, Jake and I decided to take matters into our own hands. We enlisted the help of a tech-savvy friend who was skilled at tracing online identities. Together, we combed through the messages and photos, searching for any clue that could lead us to the intruder's true identity. After days of tireless investigation, we managed to trace the anonymous Instagram account to an IP address. It led us to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. We knew we had to tread carefully, so we decided to inform the police of our findings and wait for their assistance. The police agreed to accompany us to the warehouse. It was a tense and nerve-wracking journey as we ventured into the abandoned, decaying building. The place was dimly lit, and the air was thick with dust. The officers slowly cleared each room, and as we neared the end of our search, we finally found a room that seemed to have been recently occupied. Inside, we discovered a collection of photographs, newspaper clippings, and notes plastered on the walls, detailing our lives in painstaking detail. The walls were like a twisted collage of our existence, reflecting our every move and secret moments. It was clear that our tormentor had been studying us for a long time, obsessively collecting information about our lives. As we pored over the materials, one newspaper clipping stood out among the rest. It was an article from years ago, reporting the tragic death of a man named Samuel Granger. There was a picture of him, and he bore a striking resemblance to the intruder we had encountered that fateful night. We realized that the man in black was somehow connected to this individual, Samuel Granger, and that his fixation on us was related to a hidden motive. We shared our discovery with the police, and they immediately launched an investigation into Samuel Granger's background. It turned out that he had a history of criminal activity, which included burglary and identity theft. He had vanished without a trace after his latest prison release, and our incident seemed to coincide with his reappearance in our lives. As the investigation unfolded, it was revealed that Samuel Granger had been following us not just out of mere curiosity, but with the intent to frame us for his crimes. He had stolen our identities and had been using them to carry out a series of burglaries in the area, all while leading us to believe that we were the ones under scrutiny. It was a sinister plan to divert suspicion from himself and incriminate us instead. The police worked diligently to track down Samuel Granger, but he remained elusive. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Our lives had turned into a twisted game of cat and mouse, with Samuel playing the role of the cunning predator. We continued to receive disturbing messages from him, each one more taunting and menacing than the last. The fear and paranoia that had once subsided had returned with a vengeance. We couldn't trust anyone, not even our own shadows. It seemed as though Samuel was always one step ahead, leaving us feeling powerless and trapped in his malevolent web. One night, as we lay in our beds, our phones buzzed simultaneously, signaling a new message from the anonymous account. This time, the message contained a chilling video. It showed our home, filmed from a distance, with a voice narrating in a cold, menacing tone. The voice taunted us, revealing intimate details about our lives, our families, and our deepest fears. It was as if Samuel had been inside our homes, watching us even when we thought we were safe. The video ended with a sinister promise. "I'm coming for you, Max and Jake. There's no escaping me." We immediately contacted the police and shared the video. It was a race against time to finally apprehend Samuel Granger before he could carry out his threats. The police placed us under protective custody, and our families were relocated to a secure location. It was a surreal and frightening experience, living in constant fear of what would happen next. The investigation intensified, and the police were relentless in their pursuit of Samuel. They discovered that he had been using various aliases and hiding in the shadows, making it incredibly challenging to track him down. As the days turned into weeks, the tension grew unbearable, and our lives had become a never-ending nightmare. Then, one fateful night, the police received a tip that led them to a remote cabin deep in the woods. It was a place Samuel had used as a hideout, and the officers surrounded the area, preparing to capture him. As they closed in, a tense standoff ensued. Samuel Granger, desperate and cornered, refused to surrender without a fight. A series of gunshots echoed through the forest, and the standoff ended with Samuel being taken into custody. We finally had him, the man who had tormented us for so long, but it came at a high cost. One of the officers had been injured during the confrontation, serving as a grim reminder of the danger Samuel posed. As the case against Samuel Granger unfolded, it became clear just how twisted and dangerous he was. His obsession with us had led him down a path of darkness, culminating in a string of criminal activities and his relentless pursuit of revenge against a perceived wrong. It was a harrowing ordeal that had tested our strength and resilience to the limit. With Samuel Granger behind bars, we hoped for a return to normalcy. But the scars of our experience ran deep. The fear and paranoia had left their mark, and we couldn't help but wonder if Samuel had left behind any lingering threats. Our lives gradually settled back into a semblance of routine, but we remained vigilant, knowing that the shadows could still hold secrets. The sleepovers, once filled with laughter and carefree moments, had become a distant memory, replaced by a constant vigilance and fear that would never truly disappear. The nightmare was over, but the echoes of that dreadful night continued to haunt us. The man in black had left an indelible mark on our lives, a chilling reminder that even in the safety of our own homes, darkness could find a way in.